The story begins with a purple-haired girl sitting in a dark room while a mysterious man's hand reaches out to touch her gently. The man holds her and calls her by the name Eline de Piptelin, so she groans in confusion, correcting him in her mind that her name is Eline de Arline. Wondering about the origin of the strange name Piptelin, he uttered. The girl recalls the image of the colorful hanging ornament decorating the ceiling, realizing that dreams featuring this ornament are always prophetic visions that reveal the future to her. Based on this, she concludes that the dream she is currently experiencing is also a prophetic dream. The girl suddenly wakes up in her bed to the sound of birds chirping in the morning. As she browses her papers, her eyes fall on a striking advertisement searching for a duchess, a bride for Duke Aiden de Piptelin. The advertisement reveals the harsh nature of Piptelin County, where blind, snowstorms blow year-round, and the number of those who die from the cold exceeds the number of monster victims. As for the lord of that land, Duke Aiden de Piptelin, he has never shown his face in the high society of the Athambul Empire. It becomes clear that the Duke rarely stays in his palace. Instead of attending high society salons, it is rumored that he roams the lands drenched in the blood of monsters. This reputation earned him the title of the Monster and the worst possible groom. One rumor even tells of a nobleman whose body completely froze like stone and died just for seeing the Duke's face. The advertisement describes Piptelin as a deserted county teeming with monsters, and because of its extreme danger, it is almost impossible for outsiders to approach it. Despite all that, the advertisement indicates that divorce is possible upon request, and that there are no issues regarding the personality of the head of the Piptelin family, with a hint that it is unlikely any woman would want to live a full life in such isolation. She finds an additional note in the advertisement guaranteeing the applicant the right to leave immediately if she feels uncomfortable, with a guard provided for her. So she re-examines the main headline of the advertisement. She thinks to herself that she was one of those women who would never consider marrying the monster Duke. But the prophetic dream she had last night changed everything. The moment she dreamed of it, this advertisement arrived in the mail, leading her to believe that this might be the path that would eventually lead her to Piptelin. She asks one of the maids about the identity of the mailman who brought the letters, and the maid answers in ignorance, then mutters with contempt, describing her as a cursed whore. The girl remains silent, holding the advertisement in her hand, unaffected by the insult she heard. She remembers her first prophetic dream, which was about her younger brother disappearing behind a balcony on a snowy day. That vision, which she inherited from her mother's lineage, predicted the death of her younger brother, Sid. For this reason, her mother, Viscountess Arline, tried with all her might to prevent the tragedy, screaming orders at everyone not to let Sid go out. The mother knew better than anyone else that once a prophecy is seen in a dream, it will come true one way or another. Despite all her efforts, the prophecy of him falling from the balcony did not come true. Instead, Sid fell on the stairs and was seriously injured, his last breaths fading on a snowy day as predicted by the dream. She remembers her mother's sorrowful words, pleading with her never to dream of such things again. Then her memory shifts to her father's terrifying reaction, who grabbed her violently, asking in an angry voice if she had ever dreamed about him. She replied to her panicked father in the negative as she saw the wild rage on his face. After that incident, she became a terrible secret that had to be hidden from everyone in the palace. She lived a life full of surveillance, control, isolation, and neglect, forced to pretend she was an ordinary and beloved daughter. The scene returns to the present as she knocks on the door and enters her father's room, who asks if she has had that dream again. She remains silent. She tells him no, then informs him that she believes it is time for her to find a suitable husband. Her father looks at her with suspicion and asks if she plans to attend a ball, and she thinks to herself that she has not appeared in society yet, and it is impossible to attend a ball alone. Eline tells her father that she will begin her search for a husband through the merchant guilds and asks to borrow some palace knights to accompany her. The father reluctantly agrees, on the condition that she does not speak of her prophetic dreams outside the walls of the house. After only 1 week, she suddenly finds herself in another prophetic dream amidst noise and bustle, where the colored ornament appears again, confirming the nature of the dream. Her vision manifests in a place she recognizes as a merchant guild, while people move around her diligently and actively. She turns her gaze toward the guild's warehouse and sees it piled with massive quantities of food, enough to feed an entire city for months, most of it from warm regions. A man's voice echoes in the place, ordering his men to prepare to leave before sunrise, as it is the only way to reach the entrance of the county by exactly 2 p.m. to avoid the bitter cold that sets in afterward. Eline immediately concludes that their destination must be Piptelin, for that is the strange county where winter begins as soon as its borders are crossed, and the need to reach it during the warmest time of day confirms her suspicions. Thus, she becomes certain that this is the guild she was looking for, while two men cover the boxes with a red cloth. Then the guild's emblem and name appear clearly on the cloth, Isid. She wakes up from her dream and a knight named Cedric enters, presenting her with a list of merchant guilds that take the northern routes, as she had previously requested. She browses the list to find the name Esid written on it, wondering if her dream guided her to this guild to urge her not to waste any more time. The knight asks her why she is seeking this information, and she replies that she is looking for a suitable husband. Contempt appears on the knight's face as he thinks to himself how far she has fallen to consider marrying a merchant. Eileen notices his look, but she ignores him and orders him to leave after he has completed his task, and he walks away smiling sarcastically. Eileen grips her clothes tightly, deciding in her heart that this kind of humiliating treatment will end now. She recalls the details of her dream about her first night with the Duke, fully trusting that it will come true as she saw it, and that her fate as the lady of the Piptolin family has already been decided. She resolves that even if she ends up divorced, she will never return to this family home. She remembers the note written at the end of the Duke's advertisement, which was the only part written in a rough and unrefined handwriting. Despite the poor handwriting, its words seemed strangely kind to her. That kindness reminded her of the beautiful dream in which that mysterious man called her by the name Eileen de Piptolin. She stands in her room repeating the name Aden de Piptolin in silence and deep thought. At the headquarters of the Ashid Trading Guild, an employee informs his boss of a visit from the Arlene family. Another man comments that there is something strange about the matter. He explains that the strangeness lies in the fact that the visitor is not a maid or an assistant, but the young lady of the palace herself. When asked about her companions, he mentions that she has a knight from the family with her, but he does not seem interested in protecting her and acts in a manner unbecoming of a servant to his mistress. The president suggests expelling her if there is doubt that she is an imposter, but the employee explains that the real problem. Earlier, Eileen talks to an official from the guild and tells him she heard the Ashid trading group is preparing to leave for the north soon. The official confirms they trade with the northern borough county, but she clarifies it is closer to the central region. Eileen replies confidently that she knows their trading group carries large quantities of food heading much further north than borough. Then she faces him with her conclusion, saying that the Duchy of Piptolin is almost isolated from the outside world, forcing it to rely on this group for supplies, and asks him if she is correct. So confusion appears on his face. In the president's office, he listens to the report in amazement, thinking that no one in the Arlene family, except the head of the family, practices any outside activities. He continues his thoughts in wonder, for the Viscount himself is not widely aware of what is happening. So how could a young lady from a secluded family appear suddenly and without warning and mention the name Piptolin in particular? The guild president continues to think, ruling out that she reached them by investigating other trading groups. He concludes that she came directly to the Ashid Guild, so after a moment of silence, he decides to order her to be brought in to meet him for now. In a private room, the guild president receives her, confirming her identity as Lady Eileen de Arlene, explaining that he brought her here due to the sensitivity of the subject she wishes to discuss. He begins his speech with a categorical denial, asserting that his guild does not deal commercially with Piptolin County at all. He elaborates on his explanation, pointing to a map, admitting that they distribute large quantities of food in the north, but insisting that those goods are intended exclusively for Borough County and the surrounding areas. He asserts that their trading group does not go to places as far as Piptolin, and adds that in the autumn season, carriage drivers who dare to face the bitter winds of Piptolin are rare. In her silence, Eileen recalls a scene from her prophetic dream, where a man was shouting about the necessity of moving to reach the entrance of the county by 2 p.m. The guild president smiles slyly and offers her the chance to check the carriages herself if she does not believe his words. While they inspect the goods, where boxes of apples were piled, the guild president justifies the presence of thick packaging materials by saying that the roads in the northern regions are not well paved. He continues his explanation that these insulating materials are necessary to keep the goods in the best condition during transport. Eileen touches the cotton stuffed densely around the apples and comments on the tightness of the packaging process. Then she refutes his claim calmly, explaining that they are still at the beginning of autumn, and using all this cotton just for traveling around the borough area would inevitably lead to the spoilage of the food supplies. He appears confused for a moment before answering that it is an honor for him that she cares about their goods. Eileen continues her speech, reminding him of what he said himself about Piptolin being a harsh, area that is difficult for ordinary people to enter. Despite its harshness, she asserts while holding a piece of insulating cotton, it is a duchy that functions normally. She explains her logic, saying that crops cannot grow in Piptolin where cold prevails year-round, which inevitably forces them to buy food from warmer places every time. She reaches her final conclusion, which is that the only reason the guild president filled the carriages with this amount of insulating material was to protect the food from freezing in the cold of Piptolin, because the Ashid group's true destination is Piptolin. After proving her point, she reveals her true request, which is for the guild president to deliver her letter to Piptolin, so he looks at her in surprise. Aline presents him with the original advertisement along with a sealed letter, declaring that it is an answer to the advertisement and her desire to become a bride for this man. The guild president's features turn into a sarcastic and defiant smile as he asks her dismissively about the feasibility of what she is doing. In another place, amidst the thick snow of Piptolin, a caravan of knights advances. A messenger approaches a mysterious figure wearing a black hooded robe and tells him that the name of the sender of the letter is Eileen de Arline, so the mysterious man wonders to himself if she has changed her pseudonym. But the guild president corrects him, saying that he is talking about the bride, not about that woman. The man in the black robe holds the letter, expressing his surprise that someone has actually responded to that ridiculous search advertisement for a bride. He opens the letter to read Aline's words, in which she introduces herself and explains that she is resorting to the Ashid Guild because there is no other way to communicate with him. She completes in her letter that she has fully understood all the conditions mentioned in the advertisement, and that if there is no reason to reject her, she will become his bride. The man, who turns out to be the black-haired duke, finishes reading the letter, wondering how this woman managed to find out about the Ashid Trading Guild. The guild president answers him that he does not know, and that their investigations showed she does not possess any sources of information. He adds that there is nothing unusual in Arline Palace, except for the fact that the Viscountess suffers from madness, and that her daughter Aline has never appeared in society because of her mother's early illness. The Duke taps his fingers on the table, reflecting on how a lady from a modest family and an unknown face managed to uncover their secrets. He looks at the map of his snowy county and thinks that if there were another family in Piptolin supporting her, it would have been impossible for his assistant, Milo, not to notice it. The Duke continues his analysis, ruling out that this is a conspiracy from the imperial family. The plan lacks logic and seems too clumsy. He wonders to himself if this lady truly desires the position of Duchess, for she must realize that if she becomes Duchess, she will remain a prisoner of this cold land for life, away from social parties and high society. He continues his reflections, aware of the rumors circulating about him describing him as a monster, while he continues to look at the letter in his hands. Despite his doubts, the Duke makes his decision and orders his assistant to bring her. But the assistant shows hesitation, pointing out that her identity is still unconfirmed and the source of her information is also mysterious. The Duke replies firmly that this is the reason he wants to meet her himself, for he desperately needs to know how she discovered the secret relationship between the Ashid Trading Guild and Piptolin County. His eyes flash with a dangerous light as he thinks that if her method of uncovering the secret represents a weakness for them, he will have no choice but to silence her forever. Meanwhile, at Arline Palace, Aline receives a letter from a maid while drinking tea. She holds the letter feeling surprised, for she did not expect to receive a response from the remote Piptolin County within only 1 week. She reads in the letter a welcome for her visit, and since she is the only applicant for marriage, it has been decided that her marriage to the Duke will take place immediately upon her arrival in Piptolin. The words of the majestic letter echo in her mind, declaring that she will be the wife of the Winter Duke and the lady of this eternal winter. She thinks about the fate that awaits her. A life as a duchess in complete isolation, without any relationships, in a barren land where she might be devoured by a monster at any moment. But she realizes that this life, despite its potential harshness for other noble ladies, will not differ much from her current isolated life. In fact, she finds an advantage in this fate. There will be no one whispering behind her or describing her as cursed, as the maids in her palace used to do. She continues reading the letter, which tells her that a carriage bearing the Piptolin family emblem will be waiting for her in front of Arline Palace. The letter concludes that she can board the carriage whenever she wishes, so she looks out the window toward the rising sun while holding the letter. When she leaves her room, she faces her father, who asks her if she has chosen a husband and which family he belongs to. So she answers briefly that he is from the northern region. Her father concludes from her reservation that it must be an obscure family, while she thinks that there is no benefit in telling him the truth. Before she leaves, her father calls her name, then asks his usual terrifying question, has she ever dreamed about him? Aline turns to him with a calm smile and answers him in the negative categorically. She leaves the palace without hesitation and boards the waiting carriage, which takes her far away from her family home, leaving behind a life full of restrictions. The carriage travels through roads surrounded by lush green nature on a long journey toward the north. Inside the carriage, Aline begins to feel cold despite wearing her heaviest clothes, and she glimpses a carefully folded piece of cloth on the seat next to her. She wonders if it was placed there for her to cover herself from the cold, and when she picks it up, she notices that it is incredibly thin. As soon as she unfolds it, she is surprised that the piece of cloth radiates a gentle warmth and glow. She instinctively wraps the warm shawl around herself, amazed by the immediate warmth that overwhelmed her. She examines the cloth, concluding that it generates heat on its own, and that its color and luster are unlike anything she has seen before, even in the capital. While surrounded by the warmth of the magic shawl, she looks out the window at the changing scene, realizing she is truly on her way to another world. The carriage finally enters the snowy lands, and Aline reflects on how Piptolin is a place completely isolated from the Empire, as if it were a separate country like nothing she had ever seen before. A strange land to which she has no connection. A worrying thought occurs to her. If she does not win the favor of the lord of this place, she cannot predict what might happen to her. But she soon thinks that not winning his favor might be better. And she remembers the rumor that says anyone who meets the Duke's gaze has their body freeze and die. Although she does not know the truth of the rumor, the idea remains stuck in her mind. Aline calms herself, believing that the Duke will not go so far as to kill a bride he took great effort to recruit and bring here. Nevertheless, she decides that even if she survives the first night safely, she must live with extreme caution. She sets two basic rules for herself: hide her ability to see prophetic dreams and avoid looking into the Duke's eyes at any cost. Suddenly, the carriage accelerates violently, and Aline wonders in panic about the reason for this sudden speed. She glimpses from the window a huge red monster attacking the carriage, so she freezes in place from shock, wondering if such a monster actually exists in the Empire. The carriage driver screams that he will increase the speed and asks her to hold on tight, while the sounds of monsters rise from outside as they violently attack the carriage. Aline tries to reassure herself, asserting that monsters never appeared in her prophetic dreams and that everything will be fine. She remembers that in her dreams, she passed safely from the first night with an intact body, which means she will not die here now. But the monster manages to break the carriage window and sticks its head in, so Aline screams in terror. The monster attacks the carriage and overturns it. Two more monsters approach the carriage, but at that moment, the knight who is accompanying her moves and fights the monsters. Aline collapses, exhausted and in a state of shock, repeating to herself that she will not die. She says to herself that she does not want to die, so she quickly gets out of the carriage in an attempt to escape the place. She feels a bitter cold piercing her bones, making breathing extremely difficult. But she realizes she has no choice but to flee, so she starts running in the snow. She turns behind her to see the monsters chasing her and realizes they will inevitably catch her if she continues this way, so she trips and falls. One of the monsters reaches her and opens its mouth to devour her, while she screams in terror. Suddenly, another man appears in front of her and stabs the monster. The man finishes the monster with a single blow, and its blood scatters everywhere. Aline looks at her savior, who is a handsome man with black hair, in a state of amazement. The man stands over her while she is lying on the snow and looks at her for a few moments. Aline gathers her courage and looks directly into his eyes, realizing that he cannot be the Duke of Piptolin, for nothing happened to her when she looked at him. The man approaches her, picks up the shawl that fell from her, and wraps it gently around her, advising her to take better care of it if she does not want to freeze to death. At that moment, other knights arrive and call him Your Highness, so Aline realizes in shock that this man is the Duke himself and that she should not look into his eyes. She freezes from the cold and fear, and when she looks around, she discovers that the Duke has disappeared. She feels sorry that she was not even able to thank him. While one of the knights asks her if she is okay, she finally reaches her destination and sees a huge building in front of her that looks like a castle. An elderly man with long white hair receives her, welcomes her to Piptolin, and introduces himself as Leiden, one of the elders of Blue Nose. Aline wonders about the meaning of Blue Nose, but Leiden interrupts her, apologizing for keeping her, a precious guest, waiting in this place. He orders a maid to guide her to her room immediately. The maid tells her that she will rest in this luxurious room during the next week. Aline asks Leiden what will happen after the week passes, and he seems surprised and asks her if she was not told anything at all. Leiden turns away angrily and orders the maid to leave, criticizing the useless Delrose scoundrels. who did not provide her with any clear answers. Then he turns to her with a smile and explains that their children will take care of her and teach her everything about Piptolin, and a smiling maid named Lizzie introduces herself. Lizzie explains that Piptolin is ruled by 4 families: Blue Nose, Red Delrose, Verdant Mill, and Dazzling Yellow. She reveals to her that the head of the Red Delrose family is none other than the one she knows as His Highness, Duke Aiden de Piptolin. Lizzie explains as she helps her prepare that she has to live here in Piptolin for a while, and if she finds life here acceptable, she will marry the Duke. Aline asks her why the Duke insists on marrying a woman from the Empire. Lizzie answers with a broad smile that the Duke has no interest in the women of the Blue, Nose, Mill, or Yellow families. Aline absorbs the information, and then Lizzie offers to take her on a tour of the palace after she feels warm. During the tour, Lizzie warns her to bring her coat because some areas in the palace are colder than others. Lizzie explains that Piptolin Palace is primarily a home for the Delrose family, but it also contains common areas and exclusive sectors for the other families. However, areas densely populated by Delrose family members are implicitly forbidden to others. She adds that the entire 7th floor at the top is the Duke's private property, and no one is allowed to enter except members of the Red Delrose family. Lizzie reassures her that, of course, she will be allowed to enter as well once she is married, then comments on how different this system is from the imperial system. Aline thinks to herself that it is not just a difference, but that this place lies entirely outside the scope of the Athenbul Empire's influence. She concludes that the Delrose family, which controls most of the land within the palace, must be the main lineage that holds the title of the duchy in Piptolin, while the 3 other families seem to be mere followers. But the power structure suggests they possess enough strength to claim they rule alongside the Duke, which far exceeds the role of an ordinary follower. Aline remembers Lizzie's previous comment about the Duke's lack of interest in the women of the other families. She concludes that the Duke has no intention of using his marriage to empower the other families, and that attempting to keep them under control indicates that there are bad relations between them. This explains why Blue Nose contacted her, a stranger, so quickly. They want to attract the Duke's bride into their sphere of influence. Aline confirms her suspicions that the kindness they showed her was not without cost. While walking in the corridor, she glimpses a man walking in the opposite direction. It turns out to be the man who saved her earlier. He walks toward her with confident steps and tells her coldly that this is not a place for the Blue Nose family to wander. Aline is confused for a moment, unable to respond. Lizzie intervenes, explaining that she is currently taking a tour of the palace with the lady who arrived from the sun, a term referring to the warm lands outside Piptolin. The man replies calmly that he understands the matter. Aline realizes that the residents of Piptolin call everything outside their region the sun, and she remembers how the sky suddenly became cloudy the moment they entered the Winterlands. Aline decides to take the initiative, so she introduces herself, saying that she is Eileen de Arlene from the Empire. Then she adds that she has introduced herself, and now it is his turn to do the same. The man smiles a slight smile and introduces himself as the commander of the Red Delrose Knights, Dean. Aline notices that his attitude changed completely the moment he realized she was not with Blue Nose. She approaches him to thank him for what he did for her earlier, but he turns to walk away from her. Aline tells him with a warm smile that thanks to him saving her, she was able to arrive safely. Dean looks at her for a moment and then advises her coldly that staying in the cold for a long time will do her no good. Then he turns to leave. Aline notices that his words seem sharp, but they are not without a touch of warmth. She feels relieved because, at least, he does not seem interested in exploiting her to achieve his interests. She smiles as she thinks of the commander of the Red Delrose Knights, Dean. In the evening, Lizzie presents Aline with a glass of wine that young ladies usually enjoy, explaining that it will help her feel warm. Aline sips from the glass and feels the warmth spreading through her body, thinking that the women of the winter regions must have a high capacity to tolerate alcohol. When she looks out the window, she freezes in place at the sight of the monster that attacked her earlier standing outside. Lizzie calmly tells Aline that an envoy has arrived, and it seems he has come to apologize for the recent attack. Aline wonders in amazement how a monster can send an envoy. She glimpses a person wearing a black robe walking toward the monster, so she asks Lizzie if he is the Duke. Lizzie confirms to her that the one she sees is indeed His Highness, the Duke of Piptolin. Aline wonders if it is possible to communicate with these creatures. Lizzie answers her that it is possible, of course, for they differ from star monsters. Outside, the Duke faces the monster and kills it, appearing extremely angry. Lizzie tries to reassure the terrified Eileen, asserting to her that the palace is completely safe and that she should rest. Aline thinks that the matter is not that simple. Killing an envoy means preparing for war. She takes a deep breath, realizing that this place is completely different from everything she knew. It does not resemble the capital at all, where the only weapons were the language and tricks of high society. The Duke stands outside and looks toward her window for a moment. The Duke remembers his mother, who was the first astral person he saw, and how she married for love and entered the winter regions, but she continued to long for the stars until the day she died. He remembers that he never saw his mother in her time among the stars, and all he could smell from her was the withered smell of winter. In another place, the elders of the families meet. They are angry at the attack of the Mali tribe at the time. The bride was about to arrive. Leiden asks angrily what the Delrose Knights are doing, and a young man replies to him that they are constantly busy subduing monsters throughout the regions. Then the Duke faces them, saying it was their duty as elders to disperse the monster forces within each family's territory before they could launch an attack in the first place. One of the elders tells the Duke that if things continue this way, Blue Nose will not be able to provide the sacred purpose for the succession ceremony, and the elders of Yellow and Mill join him in refusal. They shout that they cannot agree to a succession ceremony for a family head who cannot even protect his people. So the Duke realizes they are finally forcing him to make a decision. Earlier, the Duke stands amidst the corpses of monsters after finishing them all at the base of the west wall. A knight shouts that a carriage is approaching. The Duke arrives at the scene to see the smashed carriage and asks angrily if the carriage driver is someone else asking for a fee. The Duke is angry at the elders who provide no help, but rather stand as an obstacle in his way, and he grips his blood-stained sword. When he sees Aline lying on the snow, he thinks that if warmth had a smell, it would be something fragile and delicate like her. Aline recalls in her mind the details of her meeting with Dean, and how she seemed as if she would break at any moment. Dean remembers her words when she introduced herself and thanked him, and how he described her to himself as an astral person, wondering if her smell was the smell of the stars themselves. Outside, Dean speaks with one of his knights, who tells him that Leiden from Blue Nose coming to the palace was not without reason. The woman in the carriage was a bride coming from the stars. The knight concludes that Leiden intends to win the bride over to the side of Blue Nose. Dean agrees with his conclusion and remembers his mother's words as she begged him to get her out of this place. So he wonders if this delicate freshness that the bride enjoys will also be covered by the dry winter of Piptolin. He reflects on her bold words, "I will become your bride," and wonders if this bold bride will really be able to live without longing for the stars. Aline goes out to the snowy garden, noting that the cold is a little less harsh during the day. She enjoys touching the soft snow, but she suddenly loses her balance and almost falls. Dean catches her at the last moment, warning her that there are stairs in front of her. Aline looks at him in confusion, so he asks her why she is so thin. She asks him shyly to let her go. Dean tells her seriously that once snow starts falling here, it accumulates enough to bury a person, and asks her if she wants to be lost before the wedding. So she replies that she only intended to take a look at the front of the palace. She adds that she needs to get used to the cold. Dean asks her if she plans to stay here for a long time, and she answers in the affirmative. He continues to test her, asking her if she would stay even if the leader of Delrose was not interested in her, or even if she could not see her husband's face for the rest of her life. She answers him calmly and confidently that she will stay as long as she can stay here safely. Dean asks her what she would do if the Duke refused to marry, so she turns to face him directly. She smiles confidently and tells him that she will think about that matter if she is actually rejected. Dean looks at her with admiration, realizing that, as he expected, she does not fit Piptolin at all. Despite that, he admits to himself that he misses this smell that emanates from her. In the meeting hall, the elders tell the Duke that he must decide which family will oversee the upcoming wedding, and one of them suggests that the Mill family desires that as usual. Another elder suggests that the new bride, being from the people of the sun, will enjoy the dazzling halls of Yellow, just as the previous Duchess preferred, then asks the Duke if he has asked the bride for her opinion. The Duke replies coldly that he does not understand why they mention the names Yellow and Mill as if it were a foregone conclusion, and reminds them that the expected bride cannot even leave the palace without the sacred relic of Blue Nose. He adds firmly that she is not in good enough condition to travel to another family's land for a wedding ceremony. The Duke thinks that the rumor of his ability to freeze people just by looking at them is a weapon that makes things easier for him, especially when dealing with those who know the truth. The Duke recalls his encounters with Aline, how she used to call him Dean and look at him, but then addressed him by his official title, His Excellency, and looked away from him in fear of him. He thinks that this rumor has become just a source of annoyance currently. The Duke decides that the wedding will be held in the palace and they will skip other formal procedures and settle for exchanging vows, but he feels very uncomfortable with this situation. An assistant explains to Aline that a year in Piptolin, unlike the world of the sun with its 4 seasons, is divided into only 4 months, and they are currently in the extremely cold 3rd month. If they prepare for the wedding properly, the time will be close to the 4th month. The 4th month is characterized by bitter cold to the point of freezing to death, and at that time, even the residents of the winter regions refrain from going out. Aegis, Duke Piptolin's assistant from the Delrose Knights, informs Lady Aline that although the tradition is to hold the wedding ceremony in the territory of one of the other families, it has been decided to hold the vow exchange ceremony in the palace only for her safety. Aline thanks him for this attention and thinks to herself that this ceremony, which bypasses the usual formal procedures, has caused quite a stir. Aline shines in her elegant pink dress and feels that they have gone too far in taking care of her decoration since yesterday, but she realizes she feels better than she did in Arlene Palace. Aline sits down to sign the marriage document, deciding in herself that there will be no second marriage, and that her life as one of the Arlene family has ended forever. She recites her vows in a clear voice, declaring that she, the bride Aline de Arlene, pledges to be with the Lord of Winter, Aden de Piptolin, for life. Even though she recites the vow, she thinks that this connection does not necessarily have to last for life, and wonders at her feeling of tranquility despite the fact that the man standing behind her is the Monster Duke, the Mad Lord of Winter, who is surrounded by ugly rumors, attributing that perhaps to the kindness of his voice. The Duke approaches her and places his hand gently over her eyes, so she feels a strange familiarity and warmth overwhelming her, and she asks him if he is indeed the Duke. He confirms his identity to her as Aden de Piptolin, and she introduces herself too, saying she is Aline de Arlene. Then he holds her hand to help her sign. The Duke signs the marriage document. He tells her that this is not a suitable place for someone from the sun world, so she wonders to herself about the point of saying that after she has already signed the document. She takes advantage of his proximity to ask him why he sought a bride from the world of the sun. He answers with a smile that he never imagined someone like her would come. He runs his hand through her hair tenderly and tells her that all that remains now is the wedding night. He whispers in her ear that he will see her later, and she blushes with embarrassment. In her room, Aline realizes that the place and her dress exactly match what she saw in her prophetic dream. She realizes that she was striving hard to reach this moment, but the truly important part will begin after this night. She lies on her bed, thinking that the Duke must want a bride who does not give power to the other families, and that is why he summoned her, and wonders if he discovered the truth of her situation in the Arlene family. She remembers how her father built a public image of himself as a kind viscount who cherishes his sick wife and only daughter, but she realizes that the chances of information leaking about her dreams and her mother's dreams are very small because her father used to kill the servants who knew their secret continuously. Consequently, any rumors that might spread would likely be something like, people die because the Viscount's daughter saw the future recklessly. She doubts that anyone would say something like that and realizes that if they knew how the people of Arlene see her, they would not have treated her with all this reverence. She thinks about her next mission, dealing with the 3 families competing for power and the Duke who seems uninterested in the bride, and maintaining her position as a duchess quietly in the bedroom, in addition to improving her relationship with her husband. She wonders about the truth of the Duke's personality. Is he really the worst husband in the Empire, as the rumors say? She remembers that he did not seem like a bad person when he saved her earlier. The Duke enters the room, and Aline remembers how he blocked her eyes with his hands earlier. But she realizes now that she does not know when their eyes might meet. He runs his hand over her hair and asks her if she has any regrets, and she answers in the negative. He approaches her and calls her by the name Aline de Piptolin. He tells her that if the servants fall short in their service, she should fire them, and if she wishes, she can also command the Delrose Knights. She lies on the bed feeling confused and asks him as the lady of the house if there is anything she is not allowed to do. The Duke answers her calmly and with a confident smile that there is nothing forbidden to her. In the Duke's arms, Aline feels as if she is losing her mind and wonders if it is because of her closed eyes. The Duke asks her in a whisper if she is afraid, or if she is afraid their eyes will meet. She admits with a tremble that she is a little afraid, so he offers her gently to cover her eyes for her. The next morning, Elaine wakes up in her bed to realize that the Duke had left early. Lizzie enters with a group of maids. They ask her if she is awake and offer her help in changing her clothes. Elaine thanks them while she is still in her bed. When she tries to get up, she feels a sharp and sudden pain coursing through her body, and she thinks that maybe it is because she moved violently while her body was tense. She discovers that her whole body hurts, especially her lower back. The maids notice her discomfort, and when she looks at herself, she discovers red marks on her chest and shoulders, and her cheeks flush intensely. One of the maids tells her that she will bring her a painkiller. The maid returns with a glass containing a green drink, explaining that it is an extract of ninidra herbs and that it has no side effects and is often used on battlefields. The maid assures her that the drink will help her feel more comfortable. So, Eileen takes it while feeling the pain in her arm. The maids whisper among themselves, wondering who prescribed this medicine in the absence of the treating physician. Outside, Commander Dean, the Duke, receives a report stating that the treatment of the wounded outside the castle walls is progressing quickly, thanks to him personally sending the Delrose treating physician, but heavy snowfall may delay further reports. The report also tells him that the damage caused by the recent Mali tribe raid will likely take longer to recover from than originally planned. The Duke is lost in his thoughts, remembering his night with Eileen de Piptelin, when one of the knights interrupts him, asking him if he is listening. At that moment, Aegis arrives with an urgent report from the 6th floor in the main building. The Duke remembers that the 6th floor is where the bride's room is, so Aegis tells him that the lady's condition is not well. Aegis adds that she has not been well since morning, and now she is suffering from a fever. The Duke remembers that she seemed a bit exhausted the previous night, but there were no obvious physical problems. The Duke asks about the person taking care of the bride in the absence of the treating physician. Aegis tells him that instead of Dr. Beth, his student and the maids belonging to the Nose faction are caring for her, and it seems that no tasks have been delegated to the other families. The Duke orders to go and check the matter immediately. The knights are surprised when they see the Duke himself heading toward the bride's room. Aegis reaches Eileen's room and tells the terrified maids that the Duke is coming. The Duke enters wearing his cloak and asks about her condition. One of the attendees tells him that she is suffering from severe muscle pain all over her body and that her temperature is not dropping. The Duke wonders about the cause of the muscle pain, so the man explains to him that there are after effects of the consummation of the marriage, but this is not the main reason. The man reveals that this morning, the maids from the Blue Nose faction gave her the Ninidra drink, and it seems that this herb is not compatible with the nature of her body. The Duke summons his assistant, Aegis, and orders him to contact the Essid Trading Guild. Aegis issues a strict order for everyone to retreat, announcing that no one is allowed to remain on the 6th floor except for members of the Delrose family. The expelled maids whisper outside, wondering why the Duke came in person, as he is the type who prefers spending his days on the battlefield rather than attending to a woman imposed on him by the elders. One of them adds that simply spending the night with his bride was shocking enough, but for him to visit her personally and less. Then a day leads one of them to wonder if this bride is truly special to him. Eileen wakes up to find herself in a different room, wondering where she is, as this is not the bedroom she was in. She glimpses the colorful hanging ornament above her, realizing she is in another prophetic dream. In the dream, she sees the Duke telling her that his father longed for summer and was content with merely showing the light of Elo to his mother, but that was never to become true sunlight. He tells her that it wasn't like that, and that she, as a child of the sun, must understand this better than anyone else. In the dream, Eileen wonders why he is here, and why he is telling her these things. The Duke takes her hand and raises it toward his mouth to kiss it, declaring that he will bring summer back to this land, the land of Piptelin. Eileen wonders in her dream about the meaning of restoring summer here. Eileen suddenly wakes up from her dream to the sound of knocking on the door and someone asking if she is awake. She stands up startled, remembering that she is in the room where she spent her first night. She sees someone standing outside the room and asks about his identity. He introduces himself as Dean, the commander of the Crimson Delrose Knights, and explains that His Highness ordered him to check on her condition after hearing she was not well. Eileen is surprised that the Duke sent the commander of the Knights to check on her. She wonders to herself if sending another man to the room of a bride who just spent her first night is normal in Piptelin, while Dean was wondering why she wasn't answering. Eileen tells Dean that if this were in the Empire, his entry would have been a serious crime. Dean admits to himself that he forgot that for a moment, but he replied to her that it is acceptable here. Eileen realizes once again that this place is completely different from the Empire. She thinks that if that is the case, then dismissing him might be considered rude, and decides she must think carefully before allowing him to enter. The Duke enters the room and tells her he heard she was suffering from a fever. He asks how she feels now while their eyes meet for a moment. She answers that she is fine, so he informs her that the Ninidra medicine she took this morning does not suit the nature of the Star People's bodies. He explains to her that this is the reason she feels pain. She thinks that if entering the bedroom does not violate etiquette, then having a conversation must be acceptable too, and that she must adapt to this cultural difference. Dean tells her that, based on the Duke's orders, the Ashid Trading Group is currently bringing medicine from the stars. He reassures her that the medicine will arrive soon, so she replies that she understands. He tells her he will leave now, then goes on his way. Eileen sighs in relief, feeling grateful that nothing bad happened and that Dean was only doing his duty. She realizes she was unnecessarily worried because of that prophetic dream and wonders why such things happen. Eileen lies in her bed, thinking that the Duke, who does not stay in the palace much, sent Dean to check on her because he cares about her, just as he did today. As she thinks this way, she realizes once again that the Duke is a much kinder person than she imagined. Her cheeks flush as she remembers her last night and how incredibly gentle he was with her. Meanwhile, in the Duke's office, Layden, the elder of the Blue Nose family, confronts him, objecting that what he is doing is a complete disregard for tradition, reminding him that the Blue Nose family is the one that has served the Duke's bride throughout generations. The Duke replies coldly, saying that this tradition only applies when the bride is served without any failure. The Duke continues his speech, explaining that it is well known that the common painkiller, Ninidra, does not affect those coming from the stars. Then he reminds him that in his mother's time as well, the Blue Nose family was excluded from service for committing the same mistake. The Duke reaches his decisive conclusion, saying that if it happens once, it is a mistake, but if it is repeated twice, one cannot help but suspect a premeditated intention. Terror appears on Layden as he categorically denies it. The Duke continues his accusations, pointing out that on the day the bride from the stars arrived, he had allowed the use of the fastest route to Piptolin, which is the Delrose Road. However, the guard provided by the Blue Nose family was not even a formal knight, but just a single carriage driver. And that was in March, the time when monsters begin to roam, wondering if the elders sought to bring a bride only to abandon her on that dangerous, icy road. The Duke remembers how Eileen looked so thin and fragile that she might break at the slightest touch. The Duke rises from his desk, concluding that the Blue Nose family either truly does not know how to serve someone from the stars, or they simply have no intention of doing so. Then he coldly crushes a leaf of the Ninidra herb. Elsewhere, one of the elders screams in anger, wondering who sent the Ninidra without checking first, and how herbs from Piptolin, which have never seen sunlight, could be of any use to someone from the stars. He angrily orders his assistants to follow him to the pharmacy immediately. On the palace stairs, Aegis asks a maid if the Ashid trading caravan had delivered new medicine for the lady. She confirms that Mr. Milo had gone up to the 6th floor to deliver it personally. Aegis wonders to himself why Milo is delivering the medicine himself, while the maid tells him that the chief physician has gone to prepare some other medicines. In Eileen's room, a new maid introduces herself as Etra from the Crimson Delrose, having been appointed as her personal maid. Eileen welcomes her, so Etra tells her that she and the Delrose maids will serve her from now on. A knock is heard on the door, and Eileen gives permission for the knocker to enter. Milo enters and tells her he brought her medicine from the stars because he heard she was not well. Etra explains that Milo is from the Ashid trading group, and that the medicine he brought is commonly used in the capital and will not be strange to her. Milo begins to explain the possible side effects, but he remains standing far away at the entrance of the room. Eileen wonders why he is explaining from this distance. She asks him to come closer and speak, so Etra is startled by her request. Milo is shocked and asks if she means him, so she replies in the affirmative. Milo thinks in panic, wondering if she is asking him to enter the Grand Duchess's bedroom in front of the Delrose maids. Eileen asks him why he is surprised and tells him she heard that although this matter is a crime in the Empire, it is acceptable in Piptolin. Etra thinks angrily about who would spread such misleading information. Etra realizes that the only person who might leak such false information is the Duke himself, while Milo wonders in confusion if Eileen intends to cause his death, and Eileen was trying to understand this strange situation. Suddenly, Aegis appears, grabs Milo, and tells him that the master is looking for him. Milo answers in confusion. Aegis asks for Eileen's permission to take Milo for a few moments. She naturally agrees and thanks them. Etra presents the medicine to Eileen and asks her to take it and get some rest. Eileen agrees, but wonders to herself if she had said something wrong that provoked those around her. Meanwhile, the Duke was looking at a detailed report prepared by Milo, which revealed a mystery surrounding the Arlene family. Unlike the Viscount, whose roots went back generations in the region, the Viscountess's origin was unknown, and the available information about their family was suspiciously scarce. The report indicated the impossibility of confirming whether Lady Eileen, the Viscount's pampered daughter, even had a personal maid. The report mentioned another suspicious fact. The only maid seen outside the palace had died in a mysterious accident. The Duke finishes reading the report, concluding that despite the suspicions surrounding the family, he has confirmed there is no link between them and the imperial family, thus ruling out his initial suspicions that the bride might be a hired assassin. The Duke continues his thinking, noting that Eline's physical build is so weak that it prevents her from even practicing the simplest exercises, and remembers how he had to restrain himself on their first night, so much so that he was prohibited from any nightly activities for an entire week until she visited the Gojong, which caused him frustration while they were still newlyweds. At that moment, his assistant Aegis enters, announcing his arrival. The Duke is surprised by Milo's return and asks him if he has more reports to present. Aegis turns to the Duke to ask him what happened earlier when he went to the ladies' room. Aegis asks the Duke disapprovingly if he had indeed told them that it was okay for other men to enter the bride's room in Piptolin. The Duke confirms calmly that he did, which raises the question of why they would say such a thing. Milo answers in fear that the reason is that he himself almost entered the ladies' bedroom by mistake. In the dream world, Eileen finds herself walking, barefoot on the snow without leaving a trace. Without feeling the cold or being touched by the falling snow, she wanders through the blizzard until she reaches what looks like a deserted village. From the edge of a cliff, she sees a troop of knights below and recognizes their leader, whom she knew as Dean. She wonders where Dean is moving. Suddenly, she hears a scream and glimpses the same red monsters that attacked her carriage, while one of the monsters orders his companions to wait until Dean and his knights get closer. Realizing that the monsters are targeting him, one of the monsters screams, ordering his companions to duck, and at that moment, a mountain of snow collapses. The shocked Eileen realizes it is an avalanche. She wonders if those monsters were the ones who caused this avalanche. But her horror doubles when she realizes that the Delrose Knights were also in the path of the avalanche. She wakes up from the dream as she sees the snow swallowing the entire scene. Etra greets her in her room and tells her that, according to Piptolin tradition, she has spent a week in the bride's room, and that starting from today, she will move to the bedroom of the Lord of Winter on the 7th floor. Eileen stands before a group of maids, and Etra explains to her that all Delrose property within the palace is now under her command, and that she can order anyone as she pleases. Eileen thanks them. Etra adds that she has brought the map of Piptolin that Eileen requested this morning. Eileen looks at the map and realizes that her prophetic dream only revealed to her the events preceding the avalanche. She remembers that she did not see any people buried under the snow in her dream, so she concludes that if the situation is handled correctly, there will be no loss of life. She examines the map carefully, remembering that she did not see any other mountain ranges in her dream, and thinks that if she looks for terrain containing only one peak, she might be able to determine the location of the avalanche. She asks Etra if the monsters of Piptolin live in the west, so the maid confirms that the base of the Mali tribe is located there. She inquires if there are many different monster lineages. Etra answers that, except for humans, 5 lineages live in Piptolin: Mali, Wester, Terry, Ganis, and Roha, each forming its own community. Etra continues her explanation, clarifying that unlike the sun monsters, Piptolin monsters are capable of communicating with humans to some extent, and that each lineage possesses its own unique ability. She confirms that the red-scaled monster that attacked her carriage was from the Mali lineage. She adds that the Mali lineage is capable of using magic, so Eileen confirms in her heart that what she saw was indeed magic. Eileen thinks that the use of magic is rare even among humans in the Empire, while here, monsters use it with enough power to cause avalanches. Her surprise increases as she realizes that these powerful monsters do not live randomly, but in organized communities. Eileen asks if there are any plans for an expedition from the Red Delrose in the near future. One of the maids volunteers to go and ask the night troop. Then, Eileen asks if she can go out as well, which surprises Etra. Eileen recalls the conversation that took place between her and the Duke when she asked him if there was anything she was not allowed to do, and how he answered with a categorical no. Then she tells Etra of her desire to get used to the cold and learn the layout of the 7th floor. Eileen thanks the maids for their care that helped her recover. One of the maids volunteers to guide her on a tour. During their tour, one of the maids mentions that in the distant past, there was a lineage called Milton. Etra explains that they are now extinct, but their ruins still stand in the southeast of Piptolin, adding that it's just a legend, but she tells the story about them. The maid continues her speech, revealing that the legend says the Milton lineage was capable of seeing the future, which piques Eileen's interest. The maid wonders if they had also predicted their own extinction, but Etra answers that no one knows, and Eileen thinks to herself that it's probably just a coincidence, as the whole matter is nothing more than a legend. In one of the corridors, a maid comments that it is warm today, and that the Duke's mood must be good. Eileen is surprised by the connection between the two. Suddenly, the Duke appears with his assistant Aegis. The maid clarifies that her master's mood is not good at all. Upon seeing them, Eileen greets the Duke, calling him by the name Dean, which surprises the maids with her boldness. Eileen, approaches the Duke, wondering why everyone avoids her just because the Knight Commander is present. She thinks to herself that Piptalin culture is difficult to understand, while the Duke tells her that after her move to the 7th floor is complete, she will attend the upcoming succession ceremony with him. Eileen wonders in shock how that can be, as she thought the Duke had already inherited his title. The Duke explains with a smile that what they call a succession ceremony in Piptalin concerns the authority of the family head. He elaborates, saying that the rulers of the winter regions hold this ceremony every 3 years, and it concerns the inheritance of the power of the sacred relics possessed by the Delrose, Nose, Mill, and Elo families. He adds that only by obtaining that power can the authority of the family head be confirmed. In this way only, the Duke's ability to raise winter temperatures and protect the people of Piptalin from the cold can be maintained. Eileen listens in amazement, as this is the first time she has heard of this matter. The Duke explains that this ability cannot be used outside Piptalin, and that it is affected by the user's mood. Eileen recalls the maid's words, noting that although the Duke's mood was not good, the corridor was warm. The Duke tells her with a smile that the reason is his desire for his wife not to feel cold. Her cheeks flush. Then she gathers her courage to ask Dean if he knows the reason for his bad mood. The Duke answers her that he knows the reason, of course, which is that his wife gets nervous and hides her face as soon as she hears the title, Smock, Your Grace. He adds that he is forced to treat her as a stranger just so he can look into her eyes. The Duke expresses his regret that even after he finally brought her to the 7th floor, they barely have time to spend together, attributing that, probably, to the presence of a large-scale expedition on that day. Eileen suddenly jumps and asks him if there is an expedition today, and if they are heading west. The Duke looks at her in shock and asks her how she knew that. Eileen answers in confusion that she heard the Mali tribe lives in the west. Then she asks Dean to convey her words to His Highness, so he urges her to tell him. She conveys her warning to him, asking him to tell the Duke to beware of avalanches. He asks her if she is that worried about His Highness. She confirms that she is very worried. Signs of emotion appear on the Duke, and he thinks to himself that he doesn't want to leave her like this. He admits to himself that he has never felt this feeling before, no matter how harsh the battlefield he fought on was. He grabs her hand and promises her that he will make sure to tell his master. Eileen shyly asks him to take care of himself as well. He holds her hand for a moment and then tells her he will leave now. After his departure, the Duke reflects on her words and how she asked him to convey his warning to himself, realizing that those feelings of worry were directed at him. He feels overwhelming happiness at her sincere affection, something he never saw when he was just acting as a Duke, and silently wishes for her to stay safe too. As he mounts his horse, he thinks that her caution, as if she fears that falling in love with him is like playing with fire, has begun to seem sweet in his eyes. On the way, Aegis announces that the Mali tribe settlement will appear soon, and the Duke orders all units to prepare for the attack. Suddenly, the Duke hears a loud sound and looks toward the mountain. He issues an immediate order to withdraw. His assistant Aegis objects, saying they won't be able to attack this area again if they withdraw now, and that the Mali tribe will have regained its strength by April. The Duke ignores his objection and screams, warning of an avalanche, ordering all units to withdraw immediately. He issues his orders to gather with maximum speed and withdraw while the mountain collapses behind them. The forces survive the devastating avalanche. The Duke stands in the blizzard, Eileen's warning words echoing in his mind. Beware of avalanches. In the palace, Eileen stands at the window, remembering the harsh words said to her in the past, how they described her dreams as a bad omen and a curse, and her father's warning to her never to speak of them so as not to be labeled insane and rejected like her mother. The maids welcome the Duke's return, having prepared warm water and clothes for him, while Eileen decides to herself that her dreams are not just a harbinger of death, and that she is not cursed. Some knights are surprised by the maids' readiness for their early return. One of the maids tells them that the lady ordered them to prepare because she expected their return before the scheduled time. Eileen thinks that she is no longer forced to live as a ghost as she was in Arlene, away from her father and his servants who looked at her with contempt. She realizes that all she ever wanted was for no one else to be hurt because of her, but she feels anxious about the Duke's reaction and wonders if he will even believe her. There is a knock on her door, and she gives permission for the knocker to enter. The Duke enters, and Eileen notices that he returned earlier than expected. The Duke tells her that it seems she already felt that he would return home early. She answers in the affirmative. He asks her if she, in this case, also knows what excites his curiosity at this moment. She looks at him with concern and asks if he was hurt. The Duke smiles gently and tells her that he didn't receive a single scratch, thanks to her. She breathes a sigh of relief, then asks him if the Knight Commander Dean is also okay. He approaches her and asks if she is worried about him. He touches her face tenderly, and she replies to him that Dean is one of his men after all. Aline continues her speech, clarifying that she is worried about him because he helped her a lot. The Duke is moved by her sincere words. Overcome by his emotion, he surprises Aline with a deep and sudden kiss. The Duke tells her that Dean is perfectly fine, in fact, suspiciously healthy. So Aline wonders in her confusion why he seems so happy just because she asked about the safety of another night. The Duke holds her gently and whispers in her ear that if he does that, she won't be able to see his eyes, asking her if his conclusion is correct. Then he asks her if she will answer his question now. She confesses to him that she had seen a dream. He asks her if this is what she saw in her dream, and she confirms that. Then he inquires whether she had also seen the Mali tribe using magic. She wonders in amazement if he truly believes what she says, but he asks her to call him by his name. He whispers her name, Eileen, in her ear, calling her my bride. She whispers his name, realizing that his answer has anchored her more than any other word, and that his voice has carved into her soul a simple, undeniable truth that their names belong to each other. A few days pass, which Aline and Aiden spend together almost every night. The maid explains that in the succession ceremony of a married king, there is a different ritual, where the bride must formally accept the sacred relics of each family before the ceremony, adding that it was her duty to present the red Delrose relic, but the Duke will present it himself this time. She is first presented with the radiant relic of the House of Elo, bracelet called Eltos. Then a lady from the greenhouse of Mill presents her family's relic, which startles Aline for a moment. It turns out that the relic is the Setoz flower, which never withers. She is told that the presentation of the Blue Nose House will be skipped because she already possesses their relic, Ataz, which is the shawl. The Duke appears and tells her he will take Ataz from her for a moment. She calls his name, Aiden. He comments on the beauty of how the name sounds from her tongue. Then he places the sacred relic of red Melrose around her neck. It is the Metos necklace, the eternal flame of Melrose. He extends his hand to her and invites her to go together. In the ceremony hall, Leyden announces the start of the succession ceremony. The Duke reassures Aline, affirming to her that there is no need to be nervous and that everything will be fine. Leyden asks her to place her hand on the altar, but as soon as she does, a bright light explodes. The attendees shout that something is wrong, and the Duke wonders about this light, which is different from the usual. He calls out to Aline, but she suddenly collapses. She falls in severe pain, and the Duke catches her. The attendees ask anxiously if she is okay. The Duke is in pain as he holds her and calls her name. Aline loses consciousness in his arms. In her bedroom, Leyden tells the Duke that they don't know why her breathing temporarily stopped during the ceremony, but fortunately, her life is not in danger. He adds that she is simply sleeping now, and all she has to do is wake up. Aegis informs the Duke that they have checked the records of previous ceremonies kept by the Blue Nose family, but there is no precedent for what happened, confirming that none of the previous high priestesses had ever suffered an adverse reaction. He adds that they also tried to bring a doctor from the stars through Milo, but no one agreed to come. The reason is the approach of April in Piptolin, which is an extremely harsh time. While Eileen lies unconscious in her bed, Aiden remembers a scent he had never smelled in his life, a scent she always emitted whenever she was near him, a scent that resembles what one should call sunbeams. He recalls how he had no choice but to concede that that was the smell of summer, but he thinks sorrowfully, as he sits beside her, that he cannot feel that scent now. He admits to himself that, thanks to her, he has experienced a summer he had never seen before. Then he wonders in despair if he will be able to endure Piptolin's bitter cold without her. Eileen suddenly wakes up and finds herself in a strange place, wondering where Aiden is and what happened to the succession ceremony. She discovers she is standing in a sunny place, her feet touching shallow, clear water. She looks up to see a blue sky and clouds, realizing she is looking at the ocean. She feels as if she has returned to the stars and wonders if this is a prophetic dream, but she notes the absence of her colored ornament, Mopio. She glimpses a lush green mountain peak on the horizon and realizes it is the same peak where the avalanche occurred. The scene suddenly changes to winter and a snowman, and she wonders if this place is Piptolan. Then she finds herself in the middle of a green meadow, realizing that the seasons are constantly changing around her. She stands in awe in the middle of a dense forest with giant trees and intertwined roots. She concludes that this is not a prophetic dream because of the absence of Mopio. She wonders how Piptolin could have such a hot summer. She wakes up from her vision to the sound of Aiden calling her name anxiously. She calls him too and asks if he is there, and he confirms he is here beside her. He holds her hand, and she asks him if this is really Piptolin. Wondering at the intensity of the heat, he apologizes to her, explaining that he is not familiar with the temperature of the stars. so she realizes that he had used his power to warm her. He asks her if she feels any pain. She reassures him that she is fine. Eileen asks him if he had seen summer in Piptolin before. He answers that there is no summer in Piptolin. Then she inquires what happened at the succession ceremony. He remains silent for a moment. He asks her in turn if she had seen something during the ceremony. She answers that she saw a bright summer in Piptolin. She describes what she saw to him. The palace was covered with lush greenery, and there was a blue sky and clouds over the peak where the collapse happened. She asks him if there is an ocean in Piptolane as well. He tells her that he knows it disappeared a long time ago. She completes the description of her vision, saying that in the Piptolin she saw there was a vast ocean, and the sunbeams were bright and hot. She adds that she saw colorful wildflowers and the pungent smell of grass, and that everything seemed very real, while he gently holds her hand. Aiden remembers his mother's words as she pleaded with Dean to get her out of this place. He remains silent. He asks her if she wants to see summer. She answers that Piptolin's cold isn't that bad. The Duke tells her that his mother might have been from the Star People, and that's why his father loved summer too. Eileen concludes that the previous Duchess was also from the Star People. Aiden corrects her information, explaining that his father didn't just love summer, but he longed for it, which causes her a great shock as she had heard these very same words in one of her prophetic dreams. He continues his speech, which seems to be coming from Dean, explaining that his father was content with showing his mother the light of Elo, but the true sunlight that disappeared from Piptolan was different. He concludes his words by saying that she, as one of the Star People, must know that better than anyone else. Eileen wonders in confusion why Aiden is uttering the words that Dean is supposed to say. Then he kisses her hand tenderly and promises her that if she wishes, he will bring summer back to Piptolin. At that, the whole truth is revealed to her in a moment of clarity, and she realizes that Dean is Aiden himself. Eileen begins to connect the dots, remembering the rumor that says anyone who looks into the eyes of the Duke of Piptolin freezes. But she realizes that the Winter Duke actually spends his time always on the battlefield with the Delrose Knights. In the midst of battles where every moment is decisive, it is practically impossible to avoid looking at the commander's face and gaze. She concludes that the existence of a terrifying-looking duke is a good condition for keeping the other three powerful families under control. But it, in turn, creates the problem of being unable to control them effectively, so she wonders how they managed to solve this dilemma until now. Finally, she reaches her final conclusion. Dean was his public face, where he used the rank of Knight Commander, the position immediately following the Duke, to control the other families. Eileen's hand moves over the Duke's face to feel him. Eileen turns to him and whispers his name, wondering if she is really looking at him at this moment. The Duke approaches her, and she realizes that nothing terrible happens. She asks him to bring the light closer, but he approaches her more and kisses her tenderly. He asks her to promise him something, and tells her that once she sees his face, she will never be able to leave this castle, and that if she wishes to flee, she should do it now. She answers him confidently that she will not go anywhere, and a smile shines on his face. He calls her by the name Eileen de Piptolin and tells her that he had long wished to hear her say that. She calls him by the name Dean, so he asks her if she also knows that his knight commander was in love with her, then asks her not to answer. He explains that if she answers in the negative, he will feel disappointed, and if she answers in the affirmative, he will feel jealous. She asked him why he lied. He explains to her that he had seen how terrified she was on the day they met when the knights came to look for him. He reminds her that even after that, whenever he approached her, she always closed her eyes tightly. Eileen concludes that he lied to her because she was afraid of him. The Duke asks her if she would believe him if he told her that he wished to see her too, and that he felt happy every time she looked at him. So Eileen realizes that this is the reason that drove him to come to her in the form of Dean all this time. Finally, she concludes that it wasn't about Piptolin traditions that allow a strange man to enter the bride's room, but simply because Aiden and Dean were one person. Eileen asks Aiden if this means the Delrose Knights know his true face. He confirms that to her, adding that the Melrose maids and the elders of each family also know. She tells him that it's better for him to treat his subordinates well. He promises her to do his best. Then she begins to reveal her secret, explaining that she started seeing prophetic dreams at the age of 7, and the first thing she saw was the death of her younger brother. She tells him that she doesn't know the source of this ability, but her mother and grandmother had it too, and she heard that her ancestors had seen these visions as well. She confesses to him that when she was young, she used to try to stay awake for fear of nightmares, but she realized that once the prophecy appears in a dream, it will inevitably come true, no matter how hard she tried to change it. Aiden tells her that she must have felt terrified when she saw the avalanche. She answers that she didn't see anyone get hurt in that dream, so it was bearable. She adds that she was worried about where she would go if she were forced to leave Piptolin one day. Aiden reassures her that she will never have to leave this place. She asks him if that's because she saw his face. He answers her that he will simply prevent her from leaving, for he had never intended to let her go since the moment she arrived in Piptolin. Aline laughs at his direct answer. Then she asks him about the fate of the wedding gifts she received. He tells her they will be returned to their families. She inquires about the Meito's necklace. He explains to her that the eternal flame is passed down through generations to the Lady of Red Delrose. He tells her with a smile that she can continue wearing it forever. Aline admits to herself her love for this winter land, for despite its coldness, strangeness, and dangers, she prefers it to any luxurious life. She adds that the Melrose people trust her and take care of her, and he, Aiden, will never let her go. Aiden remembers their previous conversation when he asked her if she planned to stay for a long time, even if she couldn't see his face again, and how she answered that she would stay as long as she was safe within these walls. He also remembers her question about what she would do if the Duke refused the marriage, and her confident answer that she would think about that matter if she were actually rejected. In his office, Aiden reflects that Piptolin is a terrifying place that the Sun people fear approaching. He thinks that if coming to Piptolin was a better choice for Aline than living in Arlene Palace, this indicates that her life as a Viscount's daughter was truly horrific. He recalls the fact that it was strange for Aline, who is supposed to be the pampered daughter of Viscount Arlene, to arrive without a single personal maid. Then he remembers her words about her prophetic ability inherited from her mother's lineage. He concludes from her story that Viscount Arlene had married the Viscountess without knowing about her dreams. He thinks that they claim this ability has no known origin, but it seems strangely familiar, just like the unknown origin of the power of the head of the Piptolin family and the abilities of the monsters in this winter region. Aiden concludes that there are three mysterious things permeating Piptolin: Aline, himself, and the unexplained powers. Then he summons his assistant, Aegis. Aiden orders Aegis to investigate Viscountess Arlene to find out where she came from and to which lineage she belongs. Aegis hesitates for a moment, so Aiden asks him the reason for his hesitation. He answers that he was about to give him a report regarding the Viscount's family. Aegis tells him that a letter arrived today from Milo, stating that Viscount Arlene's family has contacted the Ashid trading group, but he clarifies that the reason for their contact was not related to Aline, and that they are still unaware of the relationship between Piptolin and the trading group. He reveals that Viscount Arlene is seeking to strike a commercial deal with Ashid. Aiden smiles a cunning smile, realizing that the prey has fallen into the trap by itself. In Arlene Palace, it is said that the carrot crop originally grows only in the warm south. But although Arlene Palace is located near the capital, its moderate climate allows it to be grown on a large scale, where it grows on its own as soon as its seeds are scattered, making its cultivation costs minimal. Viscount Arlene thinks that he will now be able to distribute carrots to the north, which suffers from food shortages, easier and faster than anyone else, wondering why he hadn't thought of this before. One of his assistants tells him that he has found a trading group that deals with the northern regions as his master ordered him, so the Viscount comments on his speed. The assistant answers to himself that the reason is that his daughter had charged him with the same task, explaining that most trading groups already have exclusive contracts for carrots, but the Ashid trading group seems the most likely. He adds that the other northern groups are closed off, and contacting them might take some time. The Viscount thinks that the more places they establish commercial relations with, the better. Suddenly, the Viscount remembers that his daughter Aline is somewhere in the north, and that she might be of use to him for the first time. Meanwhile, Aegis tells the Duke that the Viscount is looking for Lady Aline, but he has sent his men to all parts of the north, which indicates that he doesn't know exactly in which northern region his daughter resides. The Duke concludes that the Viscount didn't care who his daughter would marry or even where she was going, but he remembered her now only because he needs relations to distribute carrots. And this alone shows that he is an opportunist who only thinks of himself and doesn't care about his family, so the Duke's anger intensifies. The Duke tells his assistant that he will hand over the report to him later. Aegis clarifies to him that he heard before coming that the lady was headed to the library. The Duke quickly heads toward the library, leaving Aegis behind him. A servant greets him and tells him that the lady has allowed him to enter. Inside, Aiden notes that it is time to change the guard shift in this area. Suddenly, an atmosphere of tension prevails, and the servants whisper among themselves, deciding to return to the lands of Elo because they were waiting for the shift change. Aline notices Aiden approaching and asks him if he has something he would like to tell her, calling him Dean. Aiden tells her with a smile that the Delrose servants attached to the hallway are the only ones remaining, so there is no need to call him Dean. She asks him if she seemed confused. He answers that she was very natural, then kisses her. He tells her that he came because there is a matter he wants to ask her about concerning the family of Viscount Arline. Aline wonders to herself with concern if her father had sent a strange letter, for she realizes that her family is not supposed to know that she has come to Piptolin. She adds that she is worried that if he finds her and tries to return her, Aiden interrupts her and tells her that they intend to distribute carrots grown in Arline Palace. So Eileen is surprised by the existence of carrots in Arline. He confirms to her that they are not a crop that grows there originally, and she remembers that Arline is located near the capital, not in the south. Aiden tells her that the Viscount's family is looking for her place, and although Piptolin faces no problem in staying alive even if its carrot supplies don't increase, if she agrees, he intends to import food from Arline Palace. He adds with a cunning smile that the reason is that he wants to know more about her, and he assures her that if the matter bothers her, he will never mention Arlene's name again. He touches her face tenderly, and Aline tells him that she has now become a person from this place, so talking about the Viscount's family doesn't bother her. Then the Duke surprises her with his request, saying that if it is possible, he would like to meet the members of the Viscount's family himself. He asks her if it would be uncomfortable for Aline to see her family home again. Aline remembers her painful past and how returning to the family of Viscount Arline is a terrifying prospect for her. She recalls her father's cruel commands not to wander outside recklessly, not to tell anyone about her dreams, and his constant chilling question about whether she had dreamed of him. She also recalls the gossip of the servants behind her back, as they wondered what that woman was doing, the one who caused children to be injured, to die, and to flee. She brings back a horrifying scene where the servants whispered about the secrecy of the matter, and how the master would say nothing no matter what they did to her. She remembers how the servants locked her up without a drop of water for 3 days and were never punished, and her father, who treated her as an exhausting monster except when he needed her. She recalls the looks of the servants, filled with disdain, who wished for nothing but her disappearance, and how they whispered that if she spoke a single word, something bad would happen somewhere. She wonders if her current personality is capable of facing all of that again, but she tells Aiden that if she is with him, it will not be uncomfortable. So the Duke asks her to introduce him to the Arline family, but she suddenly changes the subject, telling him that the most important thing now is that she wants to kiss him. After saying herself that she is not uncomfortable or anxious, she discovers that this is surprisingly true, and that Arline is no longer the place she must return to. She realizes that the place she belongs to is this cold winter, within Aiden's warm embrace. Aiden tells her that she must decide only one thing. If she wants him to accept Viscount Arline as her father, he will do so gladly. But he adds that if she does not wish for that, he intends to show him the true winter. At the headquarters of the Ashid Trading Group, one of the employees informs Milo that Viscount Arline's family wants an answer within the day regarding whether they will trade in carrots. They add that if they refuse, they will trade with another group. Milo comments sarcastically that they do not need carrots in the winter regions. Milo wonders in confusion why they act as if they hold all the cards, and the employee replies that this is what surprises him as well. Milo thinks that no one in the Viscount's family knows where their daughter married, and the fact of the marriage has not yet been announced. He concludes that Lady Aline does not particularly welcome contact with Arline, which was his impression of her when she first arrived. Milo concludes that even without opening trade with Arline, it is not difficult to investigate the Viscountess, and he is sure the Duke knows this as well. At that moment, a messenger arrives from the palace with a letter. Milo expects the letter to be a rejection, but he is surprised when he reads its content. The letter tells him that they agree to the trade, but they want to meet the Viscount in person to talk, and Milo realizes what that means. It means the Duke and the lady are planning to travel to the Sun, soon. At the Delrose Knight Academy, the trainees are surprised by the presence of the Duchess. They wonder what brought her inside the academy. Eileen asks Aiden if she is interrupting their training. He says no and tells her that he has to recruit knights to accompany her to the Sunlands anyway. He explains to her that his power is limited to the Winterlands, and since he cannot use it outside Piptolan, he must fill any potential security gaps with additional forces. An elderly man introduces himself as Emil, the one in charge of training, and offers his formal greetings to the lady. He adds that this is the first time for most of these knights to serve someone from the Sunlands up close. He asks her to tell him if they fall short in anything, and the young knights look at them with blushing faces. Aiden announces that he will entrust the task of guarding the Duchess to the female knights only, and the female knights cheer with joy. 2 female knights step forward and introduce themselves as Melia and Ness, vowing to serve Lady Aline to the best of their ability. Aline thinks that the knights here are kind and warm, unlike those in the Viscount's palace, so she thanks them, expressing her look forward to working with them. Aegis notices that the Duke, although he made the decision himself, seems somewhat annoyed. He then draws his attention to the fact that the temperature around the palace is excessively high for the month of April. Aegis tells the Duke that he is the most skilled in using power among all the previous dukes, but he wonders, is he not overusing his power more than in previous years? Meanwhile, the knights around him complain about the heat and wish they had worn lighter clothes. Aegis expresses concern that the Duke may strain his body to its limit. Aiden thanks him for his concern but explains that it is not as exhausting as he might think and that he does not intend to lower the temperature. He thinks to himself that Eileen's body is still adapting to the cold and she will not be able to survive the April cold in Piptolin in its natural state. Aiden thinks that although he is keeping the temperature higher than usual, as Aegis said, he feels an incredible lightness in his body. In fact, he does not feel any trace of fatigue, let alone any abnormal feeling. A blonde female knight introduces herself as Rosie, a knight from Elo currently stationed at Piptolin Castle, and tells Commander Dean that she has a message for him. She tells him she heard the Delrose commander will head to the Sunlands, so he asks her what she wants. She explains that April is the season when the Yester tribe is at its peak of activity, and to control them, the Duke of Piptolin must use his power. She adds that the Mali tribe, which recently fled, has allied with Yester, making them more powerful. She continues that the Elo lands in particular are close to the Yester colonies, and the elders cannot reach Piptolin Castle because it is April. But the Elo elder wishes to express his regret regarding the Delrose commander's recent actions. Aiden understands that they want him to stay within Piptolin as before and conduct long-range campaigns to clear the Elo, Nose, and Mill lands on their behalf. Rosie reminds him that before being the Delrose commander, he is the protector of Piptolin. Aiden remembers the elders' objecting words, and how he had shown them kindness only because of their constant interference. But now they believe his kindness is their right. Aiden thinks about their bad luck. The succession ceremony that requires the divine relic has ended, and now he has a reason to stay in this castle and protect his own. Aiden tells her that he already expected messengers from Elo and Nose the moment he decided to head to the Sunlands. He adds that he is well aware there are enough knights to guard the Elo lands. He asserts that he also knows that the light barrier surrounding Elo City is still holding as it always has. He tells her coldly that he will deliver the Delrose commander's response. Then he confronts her, with anger, wondering how long they expect Delrose to be the blade that fights on behalf of the other houses, while they are content with piling up swords they never intend to use. Outside, the knights prepare for the journey, wondering if they will be okay in this bitter cold that makes even the people of Piptolin find it difficult to travel. Aegis reassures them that the knights have practiced in blizzards by accompanying the Duke on his campaigns, and that winter land horses are a breed that tolerates the cold much better than sunland horses. Aiden asks Aline if they are ready to leave for the Sunlands. Their caravan sets off through the thick snow. Inside the carriage, Aegis asks the Duke if he is pushing himself too hard. Aiden replies that he feels surprisingly good so far. Aiden holds Aline's hand and tells her that as long as her hands are warm, she must not be feeling the cold either. Aline dozes off for a moment, leaning against him. Suddenly, she finds herself in another prophetic dream and wonders about the speed of the horse. Aiden tells her to hold on tight. She realizes she is not in a carriage, but on horseback with Aiden, and she glimpses her colored mobile dancing, wondering about the nature of this active prophecy. In the dream, she sees their carriage having been attacked and smashed. Masked pursuers appear firing arrows while Aegis defends them, telling the Duke that it has become difficult to shake off the pursuit at this pace. Aiden asks him if he can hold on until they reach the Winterlands. Eileen realizes in her dream that this place must be the Sunlands, and their destination is Piptolin. But one of the servants tells Aiden that even if he reaches Piptolin, his power will not reach the Sunlands. Eileen realizes the truth of the dangerous situation. If they cross into Piptolin, they will become easy targets if enemies attack them from the Sunland borders, as Aiden's power is limited to the Winterlands. Suddenly, Aegis shouts a warning, but it is too late, and the Duke is hit by an arrow. Eileen looks at Aiden as he is hit by an arrow in his back, calling his name with concern. Eileen suddenly wakes up from her dream, gasping. Aiden asks her with concern if she is okay. She notices she was wearing different clothes in the dream, and the road was heading from Bial to Piptolin. She realizes that this will not happen today, but Aiden notices her distraction and tells her she has seen a prophetic dream. She looks at him, remembering that this person, him, will be injured in the near future. and that there is no room for doubt about that. She describes the details of the dream to him, how they were on their way back to the winter region, that 3 or 4 people wearing black masks were chasing them, and that the carriage was smashed. She adds that they were only 4 riding horses and fleeing, just like their current situation. He asks her about the 2 female knights outside. She tells him she could not see the rest of the group. She completes her description, saying that Aiden ordered them to run all the way to the winter region, but Aegis objected that the road was too far. Then she tells him she saw him being hit by an arrow. He asks her if she woke up after that. She nods her head. Aiden reassures her that in this case, there is no need to worry much. He explains to her that the dream did not predict death, and once they enter the winter region, his wound will heal quickly. In the back, Aegis and Itra whisper. Aegis admits he heard about the lady's prophetic dreams, but this is the first time he has actually seen her have one. Aiden orders Aegis to get out of the carriage. Outside, the 2 female knights wonder if Aegis was kicked out. Inside, Eileen asks Aiden what he is doing when she sees that he is using his magical power. Aiden reminds her of her words, where she said that what she sees in her dreams always comes true, and he concludes from the details of her dream, a smashed carriage, a road to Piptolin, and only 4 people, that everything else is still uncertain. He tells her with a smile that he intends to exploit this ambiguity. Then he suggests that they trick the dream together on the day they return to Piptolin. At the Ashid Trading Company headquarters, Milo is surprised that everyone's clothes look appropriate. Usually those coming from the winter region to Baal for the first time suffer from the thickness of their clothes. But this time, although they feel the heat, the situation seems under control. He concludes that the reason must be that the lady, who hails from Baal, had checked matters in advance, and thanks to that, they did not need to prepare special Baal-style clothes, which made things much easier for them. Eileen remembers how she was surprised that these were their thinnest clothes, and that in the Empire they do not need to wear such heavy clothes. Aiden contemplates the sunset, thinking that a winter sunset is nothing but a quiet darkness that turns into pale shades. But here, from the sky to the edge of the earth, everything bears bright colors and radiates brilliance. He realizes that this is the kind of sunset his bride from Baal used to see. Later, Milo tells the Duchess that requests from the Arlene family continued to flow even before her arrival, and it is likely that the Viscount has found another trading partner in the meantime. Eileen replies that this is likely not the case, because until the time she left the Viscount's house, there were almost no sources of income. They may look as if they attend parties and spend money everywhere, but in fact, they have squandered almost everything they had and suffer from financial hardship. She adds that the huge dowry presented at her mother's marriage has long been wasted due to the Viscount's desire to show off, and the carrot distribution deal will be something he desperately wants to succeed. Milo thinks that the Ashid Company practically controls the food distribution routes in the north, and the lady does not seem as uncomfortable as he expected when talking about her family, and that this may be his opportunity to ask her more. Milo asks for permission to interrupt her and asks if she can tell him about her mother's family. Aiden looks at him with anger, so Milo justifies his question by saying it is better to hear it directly from her. But Eileen reassures him that she does not know much herself and will tell him what she knows briefly. After a few hours, Milo wonders in surprise if all the women on her mother's side possess prophetic dreams. Then he asks her if she also learned of the relationship between the Ashid Company and Piptolin through a prophetic dream, and if she came here alone based only on what she saw. She confirms that to him. Eileen adds that she does not know much otherwise. Her mother lived with her maternal grandmother in Arlene Palace, then married, and the only other thing she knows is that her grandmother moved far away when she was young. Milo thinks that for a quick judging and decisive person who spent almost her entire life locked in that palace, her actions are bold. He concludes that he understands now why the Duke came in person to Baal. He intended to crush the family of Viscount Arlene. In the evening, Aiden asks Celine if she is wondering about meeting the Viscount in person, who will visit them tomorrow at noon. She admits she is a little worried, as she has come this far because it concerns her family, but she does not know if she will be okay seeing the Viscount's face directly. Aiden offers her help. He asks her how she would feel if Viscount Arlene, about 10 years from now, were living in luxury and a higher status than his current state. Then he asks her if she would have any family affection left for him. Aiden tells her to do as she wishes. No matter what he does, once he sees his face, he will never be able to leave the Winterlands anyway. He reassures her that it is okay if things go to the extreme, but if she is still worried, he will show her just how bad a person he can be. Viscount Arlene explains to the Ashid Company manager that their lands have become the only place near the capital where carrots are grown. He adds boastfully that all the crops are larger than a grown man's hand and of excellent quality, but Aiden shows no interest. The Viscount wonders about the reason for this lukewarm reaction, wondering if this man, whom he heard was the deputy manager of Northern Distribution, lacks real authority, while Aiden contemplates that the Arlene lands have become unusually warm for more than 20 years. Aline enters and corrects him that the situation has changed since less than 30. She remembers the Duke's words to her to do as she wishes. Aline remembers that when her first prophetic dream showed her their first night, she thought it was an opportunity to escape from the Viscount's house. That house was so horrific that she even welcomed a stranger she met in a dream. And although she is now better off and more balanced, she did not find the courage to face the past she left behind. But because Aiden gave her courage, she began to want to meet the people of the Viscount's house face to face again. But she wonders if they will recognize her. And if they do, how should she behave? In the meeting hall, Aline appears, wearing a crown and a veil that hide her identity. The Viscount welcomes her and asks the Duke about her identity. The Duke reminds him that he previously introduced himself as the deputy manager of Northern Distribution for the ECID Trading Company, then introduces Aline as the Northern Distribution Manager, explaining that she is a very busy person, but she set aside time due to the company's interest in this deal. The Viscount thinks that finally he has found someone on his level. The Viscount welcomes her, expressing his hope to complete this deal successfully. Aline thinks that her father does not seem to recognize her, and that is a good thing. The Viscount begins his speech, noting that this winter is particularly harsh, and the demand for carrots has risen in the north because of it, while Aiden and Aline think that this has nothing to do with the harsh winter in the Sunlands. The Viscount tells Aline that he is confident that Essid will find his terms favorable. Aline remembers that he was the man she had to ask for permission for every little thing, the man whose orders she followed without question, the man who controlled her world so tightly that she could barely breathe, and whom she once felt was large and terrifying. But she cannot believe how small and pathetic he looks now. The Viscount adds that shipping costs are low, so the basic price is already better than what can be obtained from the south. Aiden thinks that the Viscount is arrogant because he is a nobleman and he is a merchant, but it is very clear who the desperate party is here, and that he lacks the most basic business sense. When the Viscount begins discussing the terms, Aline interrupts him, saying, before that, she realizes she may talk too much and her father may recognize her voice, but the word has already come out. The Viscount asks her if there is something she would like to say. She answers in confusion that she needs to check the quality of the carrots. The Viscount welcomes the idea and invites her to see them for herself. Then he invites her to his palace for dinner and to discuss the matter further. Aline hesitates because she was not prepared to go that far. Aiden intervenes, noting that the manager has another appointment and offers to go in her place. Aline feels relieved that her father did not recognize her, but she feels a slight emptiness at the same time. On their way back, the Viscount tells Aiden that they are about to reach Arlene and that it is very close to the Essid branch, then draws her attention to a tree. The Duke asks him to stop to take a look at it. Viscount explains to Aiden that this tree marks the boundary, as this side is Arlene land, explaining that it cannot be noticed in spring or summer, but in winter, the leaves stay on only one side. He adds that in summer, it becomes uniquely warm behind this tree, and that he may not believe it, but carrots cannot even be grown on the other side. Aiden asserts that the difference in temperatures here is clear. He possesses the authority to control the weather and knows it better than anyone else. And he realizes that this place exactly resembles the boundary between the sunny lands and the winter region. At the banquet, the Viscount tells them that the quality of Arlene carrots definitely exceeds other regions. Aiden thinks that given the Viscount's financial situation, this dinner must have cost him a fortune. The Viscount then suggests they execute the contract immediately. Aiden tells him that even if they agree on the terms, he needs the manager's approval. And at that moment, a scream is heard from an adjacent room. One of the servants shouts, asking his mistress to calm down. Then the lady orders the guest to be brought to her. Aiden wonders if that is the Viscountess. Aiden comments that he heard the Viscountess was not well. The Viscount replies not to mind. She is usually quiet, but today in particular, Aiden interrupts him, noting that they should care, as the Essid company deals in medicines too, and offers to pay his respects to his lady, and perhaps recommends some high-quality medicinal herbs. The Viscount welcomes the idea, believing his wife will be happy with that. At the Viscountess's room door, the servant tells his mistress that the guest has come to greet her. A panicked maid opens the door and tells them her mistress says to come in. The Viscount allows Aiden to enter. Aiden remembers that Aline was the first person he met who possessed a unique scent. If Aline's scent was as fresh as summer, the scent here is heavy, very dense, damp, and full of moisture, like the smell of rotting plants. He sees purple eyes like his bride's eyes, but with a completely different feeling. Aiden introduces himself as Dean from the Essid Trading Company. The Viscountess tells him she married a handsome man. Then she tells him what Eileen told him earlier, that her mother, grandmother, and all the women in her lineage saw prophetic dreams. She adds that if she tries to return home, she must not be stopped, and that she has something to give her. Aiden wonders if the Viscountess saw something in a dream. The Viscount laughs sarcastically, saying she always says such nonsense. The Viscount tells Aiden that he has paid his respects, that the refreshments should be ready now, and invites him to go down and finish their discussion. But Aiden asks him, confirming what he said earlier about Arlene becoming warm since less than 30 years, and more than 20. The Viscount answers in the affirmative. Aiden offers him 20 gold pieces for each carriage, which is 5 gold pieces higher than the market price. The Viscount agrees enthusiastically. The Viscount demands the contract be executed immediately. Aiden suggests an exclusive contract with Essid and tells him they can offer a better price if he agrees. Aiden thinks that the sharp boundaries between the sunny lands and the winter region have long been a subject of study in Piptolin. The prevailing theory is that the cold continues exactly up to the limit of the Piptolin family's authority, and the weather is affected by that power. Aiden continues his analysis, explaining that since the succession ceremony with Aline, using his power has become easier than ever before, and he vaguely thought it might be due to the summer energy he feels from her. But the time frame in which Arlene became warm, more than 20 years but less than 30, is close to Aline's own age. And just like Piptolin winter, Arlene's summer has sharp boundaries. Seeing that Eileen's mother also radiates that summer energy, he concludes that the key to this phenomenon is not Eileen alone. Her mother's lineage itself may be the reason. And if this hypothesis is correct, Arlene enjoyed a warm summer thanks to Eileen's mother's lineage. But Eileen has now become one of the people of Piptolin, and the Viscountess will soon enter her eternal slumber, because inside that foul smell, there was the unmistakable scent of death. In the meeting hall, the Viscount asks enthusiastically about the number of years of this exclusive contract. Aiden suggests the contract term be 3 years. By that time, the summer of Arlene lands will end, and for the Viscount, winter will begin. Later, Eileen examines the contract and confirms with Aiden that once it is signed tomorrow, all their business here will end, and they will return to Piptolin the next day. A prominent penalty clause draws her attention. The clause states, if the Arlene Viscountcy delivers less than half of the carrot shipment for the first year, they must pay triple the amount to the Piptolin army as compensation in the same year. Aiden realizes that if 1 year of bad harvest occurs, the Arlene family will sink into debt for years to come. He tells her that if that worries her, there is no need to sign. Eileen thinks that when the veil dropped between her and the Viscount, cutting the thread that bound them as father and daughter, she realized for the first time that the weight that had been pressing on her heart all her life might be something she could live without one day. And in the moment she agrees to this deal, a chain will be tied around Viscount Arlene's neck. She wonders if it is okay to feel this small amount of sorrow over it. Aiden reassures her, affirming that it does not matter how cold her heart is, it is all right. Aiden sips the tea, commenting that it is nothing like winter wine. It is just warm, bitter water, no matter how much he drinks. Eileen explains that it refreshes the tongue when taken with sweet cakes, and thinks that Aiden has never had tea before. Aiden remembers the records mentioned that the stars are diverse, and assumes this is what that means. A rich and gentle land where even bitterness becomes another flavor, and the sun made by the brilliant Elo may be able to simulate warmth, but it still does not match this true winter sunlight. He tells her that now, under this very sun, in this moment, she probably does not realize how alive she looks. He encourages her not to hesitate. She is not doing anything wrong. It is those who made her suffer, and she is simply holding them responsible for their arrogance. They are the debtors. Aiden shakes the Viscount's hand, expressing his look forward to working with him, and tells him that if any problem arises regarding trade, he must contact the manager directly. The Viscount asks if he means him personally. The Viscount replies that he has understood and will contact Aiden's administrative manager. Aiden thinks to himself that it is okay for Eileen's heart to harden more, and thinks that she will remain bright anyway. That night, Eileen dreams of someone calling her, so she checks the place around her. She realizes she is in one of the rooms of Arlene Palace. She sees her mother on the bed and calls her in shock. She approaches the bed and sees herself in the past. Her mother tells her this is a dream. Eileen's mother asks her in the dream to come to her when she wakes up. She adds she has something to give her. Eileen remembers that at one time, when her mother was still clear-minded, she was kind and affectionate toward her and her brother, telling her that her father thought it inappropriate for nobles to call their mothers Mama, but she was telling her to call her Mama when they were alone, and that this would be their secret. Eileen remembers how everything changed, and how her father grabbed her tightly and ordered her never to talk about her dreams again, and to tell him immediately if she dreamed of him. She recalls his shouting, warning her not to approach her mad mother again. She also remembers how she asked one of the maids about her mother's condition, and she answered that she was the same as always. And she remembers the maid's harsh words saying there was no use in going, she wouldn't recognize her anyway. Eileen admits to herself she has not seen her mother up close for 20 years. And the last time she looked at her consciously was before her brother Yashid died, when her face was distorted with terror from her dreams and hatred toward her. But in her dream, she looked at her calmly and clearly. She looked at the Eileen in the dream, who is dreaming inside her dream, without any resentment or madness, only in peace. Her face perfectly reflected Yashid's face before his death. Eileen suddenly wakes up from the dream. She realizes death is coming for her mother. Today, now. In his office, Aiden thinks that he will leave for Piptalin tomorrow, and he has already placed guards so that Eileen's prophetic dream does not coincide with their departure. But suddenly he feels a strange presence. So he opens the door to find Eileen. He asks her if something is wrong. She tells him she saw a dream, a prophetic dream, and apologizes for waking him at this hour. She tells him her mother. He interrupts her and asks if the Viscountess has left her room. Eileen tells Aiden she knows they are leaving for winter tomorrow, and if she visits her mother now, her relationship with the Esid Trading Company will be exposed. And also the fact that he is her husband, but she pleads with him to go to Arlene Palace now. Aiden remembers her mother's words when he met her, and when she asked him not to stop Eileen if she was coming to her. Aiden reassures her that Winter is not fragile enough to fear something like this, and reminds her of their vow that night. He tells her she can never leave Piptalin, and that Piptalin belongs to her entirely. He wipes her tears and tells her to prepare to leave, not to worry, and to do what she must do. At Arlene Palace, the guards are surprised by Aiden and Eileen's arrival at this late hour. One of them orders them to stop and identify themselves. Cedric recognizes Eileen in shock. Eileen orders them to open the door immediately. Inside, the servants are surprised by her sudden presence. One of the maids whispers with disdain, saying that even if she is a daughter of this house, she is married. Now, and it is shameful to arrive without prior warning. The red-haired maid mutters that she feels an ominous feeling, and Eileen remembers that maid when she called her a cursed whore. Eileen asks her name again, and the maid is surprised. The maid accuses her of trying to cast a curse on her or something of the sort, and she remains silent. The Viscount arrives and asks angrily why Eileen is here. He wonders about her relationship with the Ashid Trading Group. He shouts at her, wondering how she dares to appear at this hour, and vows to hold the Ashid Group accountable for this. Eileen tells him calmly she came to see her mother. He is surprised. She clarifies the matter has nothing to do with the Ashid Trading Group, and she simply came today as her mother's daughter. Her father asks her in shock if she came because she saw something. At that moment, a maid comes out of her mother's room, telling the master the lady is currently. Then she is surprised by Eileen's presence. Aiden tells her calmly it seems what she predicted is indeed happening. Eileen confirms she saw something, telling her father she should have greeted him formally first, but the situation is urgent. She apologizes to him, tells him she will go to see her mother first, then goes on her way. The Viscount wonders in confusion if the family Eileen married is not northern nobility but a merchant family. The maid remembers how Eileen was a helpless girl who couldn't even stand up to a maid, but her behavior has now suddenly changed. Eileen hesitates for a moment at her mother's room door. Aiden encourages her to enter. Inside, she calls her sleeping mother by name. She tells her she came because she called her and calls her Mama. Her mother congratulates her on her marriage and asks her if her husband is a wonderful person. Eileen answers in the affirmative, asserting that he is. Eileen notices a colored ornament in the room, just like the one in her dream. Her mother tells her the ornament is hers now, and it was a gift she received from her grandmother. She explains to her that even for those gifted with foresight, death always comes suddenly. Once the end approaches, all focus shifts to the imminent darkness, and everything else in the world loses its light. She adds that the inability to change a future you have already seen is a terrifying burden to carry. Eileen thinks her mother must have been very afraid at that time. She remembers that after Sid died, she lived in constant fear that her next dream would show her another death. And even when she knew the servants serving her would soon disappear, she could not speak, for fear that someone else would suffer like her mother suffered if she spoke. Her mother tells her that seeing unstoppable death makes her feel as if she caused it, but it is not her fault, and tells Eileen that in this life, it was never the fault of either of them. Eileen's mother apologizes because she did not tell her that sooner. Eileen bids her mother a final farewell, while the Viscountess closes her eyes in peace. Aiden embraces the sad Eileen. Aline thinks it is painful to see an inevitable future. She adds that although she predicted the 15 avalanche and managed to avoid injuring the Delrose Knights, she wishes she saw only such dreams. At the Viscountess's funeral, the attendees whisper, wondering about the identity of the man standing next to Viscount Arlene's daughter. One mentioned hearing mention of the Ashid trading group earlier. Another wonders if she married a merchant. Aiden thinks Viscount Arlene's daughter never appeared in high society. One concludes that this is why the Viscount kept the marriage secret, commenting on how scandalous it is. The Viscount explains to the attendees that while he stepped away for a moment, his wife closed her eyes quietly. And although his daughter was immature enough to leave the house, he did not want to interfere in her final meeting with her mother, so he allowed her to stay. Aiden thinks sarcastically that even in the midst of bereavement, the Viscount is obsessed with maintaining his image. His thought is interrupted by the appearance of a woman saying to Aline that she married a wonderful person. Aline is surprised by the appearance of an elderly woman calling her grandmother. Her grandmother adds it has been a long time and calls her dear. Aiden wonders in surprise about this woman's identity. Aiden welcomes her. The woman introduces herself as Verda. She recognizes him as the Duke of Winter, commenting that, as expected, he is a young man different from the rumors.